Just how good is the Oklahoma Sooners 2024 recruiting class? Well, if you're listening to Brent Venables, the 24K class, as they like to call it, is the OU coach's best since he arrived back in Norman in December of 2021. If you're going by the rankings of the industry's top recruiting services, however, Venables' third class at OU isn't as golden as the coach would have you believe. In fact, as far as the 247 Sports Composite rankings is concerned, OU's 2024 class, ranked 9th nationally, would be considered third of three in terms of the classes the former Clemson and Oklahoma defensive coordinator has assembled since arriving in Norman following a pair of national championship runs and 2 other title game appearances as Dabo Swinney's right-hand man in Clemson, South Carolina. Wait, third of 3 classes? Now how can this be? The Sooners landed the highest ranked defensive lineman and 4 other blue-chip defensive line prospects in total in this class, along with the top-ranked and number 3 interior offensive lineman in Eddie Pierre-Louis and Eugene Brooks, not to mention beating out former OU head coach Lincoln Riley and USC for the top-ranked running back in the country as well, Taylor Tatum, who up until the last month of the college football season was also a composite 5-star. In all, Oklahoma had 7 players that ranked in the top 100 of at least one of the recruiting industry's big 4 companies' overall player rankings in this class. Not to mention the tight end in Devon Mitchell, who reclassified for 2024 during his junior season, but as a 25 prospect was the 16th ranked overall player of the country and the number 1 player out of the state of California. So why are these rankings all over the place? Who should you believe? Is there one service more trustworthy than the others? And which, if any, should you trust over the OU coaches themselves? As of Monday, many Sooner fans are fighting mad at On3 due to its final ranking of the darling of the 24K class, Dale City, Oklahoma's own David Stone, which ranked him 20 spots lower than both the 247 composite and its own industry ranking averaged. On3 had him ranked as the 29th overall and number 4 defensive line prospect in the country, while its own industry ranking listed Stone as the number 1 defensive line prospect in the country, number 9 overall. Confused yet? Don't worry. Some of the most seasoned recruiting analysts in the country struggle to come up with a clear explanation of the vast differences between one recruiting site versus another. Even Shannon Terry, who owned or founded 3 of the 4 top recruiting services in the country, Rivals 247 and now On3, failed to give a convincing answer when asked by a friend of the program, Shelton Walker, how the rankings of a particular player can fluctuate as much as Florida fans were seeing prospects who committed to Billy Napier's Gators during a time when there were no scouting events going on to even evaluate players and adjust their lists.
Yeah, there was, I think, 4 or 5 players of our top, I want to say 200 players. It was like DJ Lagway, Miles Graham, Aaron Childs, and I think one more at the time. Chauncey Bowens may have been, or maybe it was one of the running backs. I don't recall exactly. And they all had some major movement. And it was more of the timing of it. It was in the middle of the summer when
Right.
The only person that played, and I even said it, I said, look, DJ Lagway played at the Elite 11, did not have much success at the Elite 11, which a lot of people spoke to. Obviously, he kind of put that to bed by winning Gatorade Player of the Year and now finishing 2nd player overall and number, I think, for On3, but number 1 for 247. So that all got hushed away pretty quickly. But it was, again, the middle of summer where linebackers, they don't have camps like that. I don't think running backs had too many camps going on. So there was a lot of question marks. And he was getting a lot of flack, and we happened to come across each other's Twitter. And he came on the show, and we asked him about, like, hey, why? It doesn't make any sense. It was like 40 to 60 spots. And even he said, like, yeah, you can see a kid move from 40 to 60 spots. He said, like, in the interview, and like at the time I didn't really kind of hit me, but it's like, dude, you take someone who's top 10 and put him in 50. It's kind of a big deal. That's a star. Stars don't really matter at the end of the day. It's playing on the football field. But with the new world of NIL, this valuation and how these kids, I believe, are signing pro contracts is due to the player evaluation.
Make a little more sense? Didn't think so. For those of us following Oklahoma, after hearing Coach Venables tell us during the first day of the early signing period in December that this was his best overall class to date, the numbers you see across all of the Big Four's rankings will cause you to second guess either Venables or the system at large, because there are truly big swings when it comes to the rankings of a number of players, not only in OU's class, but in the classes of every major program in the country, save for a few. And maybe that's by design. After all, a lot is riding on class rankings that you see for the 134 FBS football programs, particularly those such as Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, and yes, Oklahoma. Not to mention the players of this new NIL era who now legally earn money to play college football, and how much money they can be earned is based, at least partly, on the number of stars you see next to their name on a recruiting industry ranking list. Let's face it, in today's college football, the highly inflated contracts demanded by coaches are not solely based on wins and losses, but increasingly by how many 4 or 5-star players they can sign to their rosters. After all, each of the 23 national champions in FBS since the start of the Rivals era had at least one top 10 recruiting class prior to winning it. So a coach's ability to outmaneuver his peers with X's and O's oftentimes takes a back seat these days to which coach can land the most talent from year to year. For the last 17 seasons, the king of recruiting was none other than newly retired Nick Saban at Alabama. And while most consider King Nick the best when it comes to X's and O's, there's little doubt that the key to his 6 national titles at Alabama, and 7 overall, has been his ability to recruit the best talent in America to Tuscaloosa year after year. Georgia's Kirby Smart, and before that Swinney and Venables at Clemson, along with programs like Ohio State and LSU in recent years, have closed the gap on Saban in Alabama, however. And many feel that closing that gap played a big part in Saban's sudden retirement just 2 days following the national championship game won by Michigan 2 weeks ago. The NIL and transfer portal have at least somewhat leveled the playing field when it comes to recruiting, making it harder to hold on to players who don't get a chance to play right away due to demand and money available for the most talented prospects. So if you had to guess, how many recruit star ratings would you say are based simply on the coaches or programs recruiting them? Do coaches with a reputation for convincing blue chip recruits to commit to a certain program automatically influence a player's overall composite or industry ranking just by virtue of the fact that they're recruiting them? On3 owner Terry told High Top Sports back in July of 2023 that endorsements, or at least in one case, a mark against a player by well-known or accomplished coaches at successful programs can be the difference in a shift of 40, 50, or even 100 plus spots up or down on Three's rankings.
That question segment with Shannon Terry was, I go, hey, why are these guys moving? He goes, well, our guys go in and we do our own measurements and we have interviews with the coaches. This is where he was starting to dig a hole a little bit. I was trying to dive into this because he was talking about his relationship with Brian Hartline, and there was another great football player that he has a relationship with that helps evaluate the talent. But he's like, yeah, I trust what Brian Hartline says. So I was like, hey, if I talk to Brian Hartline, he goes, yeah, this kid fell asleep, or maybe the home life is what we thought it would be. We take that into consideration into their recruiting. His words, not mine.
So if Brian Hartline, Ohio State wide receiver coach with a history of luring top-level talent to the Buckeyes, has that much sway over Terry's industry ratings when it comes to wideouts, is it fair to surmise that 2024 Oklahoma D-line signee Nigel Smith's On3 industry rating of 294 overall may have been a top 100 ranking if he had committed and signed with Ohio State or Texas A&M? Both programs were in the running to land Smith, and both have defensive line coaches with a history of landing big-time talent in the trenches. Ohio State's Larry Johnson, known as the godfather of D-line coaches after recruiting and coaching 14 first-team All-Americans as the defensive line coach at Penn State and Ohio State, made an offer to Smith all the way back in January of 2022 to join the Buckeyes, and OSU was in the running for his services all the way up until he made his commitment to Oklahoma in September. Joey and Nick Bosa, along with Chase Young, are the most recent in a long line of Buckeyes to flourish under Johnson's tutelage, with all three being named first-team All-Americans and going in the first 3 picks of the NFL draft in their respective seasons. Young was a unanimous selection to that All-America team, as well as a finalist for the Heisman Trophy in 2019, while also winning the Bednarik Award and the Bronco Nagurski Trophy, both awarded to the nation's top defensive player. Young and Nick Bosa will start for the San Francisco 49ers in just over a week as they face the Kansas City Chiefs in Super Bowl 48 in Las Vegas. Elijah Robinson, the now former Texas A&M defensive line coach, was also in hot pursuit to land Melissa Texas's 6'5" Smith after getting commitments from a grand total of 6 5-star defensive line prospects in the previous 2 recruiting cycles for the Aggies, 5 of them alone in 2022. That haul, featuring 5-star defensive line prospects Walter Nolan, Shamar Stewart, Gabriel Dindy, LT Overton, and Anthony Lucas, was the catalyst to the Aggies signing the highest rated recruiting class in the history of Rivals 247, ESPN, and the On3 era. This again begs that question. As Smith committed to A&M and Robinson in September, might his overall ranking have also skyrocketed into 5-star territory? Especially given Terry's revelation, one could fairly come to such a conclusion, especially when you factor in Smith's 6'5", 270-pound frame, nearly identical to that of the jewel of the 2024 Oklahoma class, 5-star plus rated Stone. You can say the same thing for Jaden Jackson, Stone's IMG teammate, who many around Oklahoma and throughout the country believe may have an even bigger year one impact on the Sooners' power line than even Stone. Jackson's overall ranking is, by many accounts, criminally lower than it should be. The On3 industry ranking says Jackson is number 289 in the country, while the 247 composite has Jackson ranked at number 321. What would Oklahoma's class ranking look like if either Smith or Jackson had been 5 stars, or even just in the top 100 of the 247 composite or On3 industry ranking? What if the Sooners' number 9 recruiting team ranking had been boosted by a Danny Okoye rating that reflected Nick Saban's opinion of the Tulsa Edge signee, rather than hampered by an outside of the top 100 rating driven by the narrative that Okoye played in a subpar high school league, so he couldn't be a 5-star talent? And what if Devon Mitchell's 5-star stock didn't plummet from top 20 overall in 2025 to below 200 after he reclassified to 2024? ESPN still has him in its top 100 at number 68 following that reclassification, but it's likely safe to assume that not all 11 tight ends ranked ahead of him by 247 or On3 will be starters for their respective teams in their freshman season in 2024. Mitchell, at 6'3" and 255 pounds, most certainly will be, however. If that happens, wouldn't it be reasonable to say that he probably should have been ranked closer to his 2025 rating, top 15 overall, than where he landed on the 2024 lists? Judging by what we heard from On3 owner Terry, and armed with the facts regarding the recruitment of just the players featured in this segment, I strongly believe that it's beyond fair to say that Brent Venables' 2024 recruiting class is precisely what he told us it was on December 21st, his best overall class since arriving in Norman to become head coach of the Sooners. His track record as a coach and success as a recruiter, albeit in someone else's program, carries more weight, in my opinion, than a clearly imperfect system born as the result of a highly profitable business model. On paper, at least according to what On3 247, Rivals, and ESPN put on paper, the 24K class may not have the luster of Venables' 2023 class, or even the 2022 roster he put together in less than 2 months following the departure of Lincoln Riley after the Bedlam game in 2021. But Venables' experience and reputation for identifying and developing the talent that contributed to 3 national championships leads me to believe he deserves the benefit of the doubt when he says this class is the gold standard. In reality, we won't be able to fully judge Brent Venables' initial 3 recruiting classes at Oklahoma until after the players signed have finished up their Sooner careers. But the same is true for every SEC, Big 10, Big 12, ACC, or Group of 5 college football program in the FBS. whether sites like Shannon Terry's On3 ranked them number 1 or 134. If nothing else, OU's 10-win 2023 season should tell us that the coach has the program pointed in the right direction and that he believes in his process of building an SEC winner. I'm not saying there shouldn't be any weight given to the player and team recruiting rankings compiled by the Big Four recruiting sites. I'm just saying that it means there are variables that can't be accounted for or measured with a ruler, scale, or stopwatch, and I trust Brent's ability to identify and account for those.